Hello and welcome to another thoughtbot live development stream. Happy Friday, if it's Friday where you are and when you're watching. Today we have an exciting double feature featuring two different things that we're working on in the same application. One is migrating this Rails monolith from Heroku to our infrastructure on AWS. And the other is taking a smaller service that exists as a standalone Rails app and importing it or bringing it, merging it into the larger Rails monolith. We're going to start with the infrastructure stuff. And joining me today is Joe Ferris, the thoughtbot CTO. Joe, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you have actually started this migration from Heroku to AWS already. I'm going to bring up your screen. There we go. So tell us a little bit about the migration, why we're doing it, and where things are currently at right now.
Sure. So we've been migrating our internal applications from Heroku to AWS largely for security and compliance reasons. Heroku Enterprise, for what it is, would be a little expensive for us. And we have this platform we've developed for deploying applications to AWS that we use for our clients. And so we can happily use it for ourselves as well. And so we've migrated a few smaller internal ones just to test the process and make sure that we have a playbook to follow. And so now we have started migrating what I would say is our core internal application, which is appropriately called Hub.
Yeah. And if you've tuned into the stream before, you've seen me do some development on Hub. It's the sort of centralized scheduling system that we use at thoughtbot. It keeps track of, it's like a combination, it's basically an ERP, but keeps track of the schedule, knows what everyone's working on, what their skills are, and it sort of integrates with a lot of external systems all around that we use to keep everything together. It's our internal message board, that kind of thing as well. You want to talk just a little bit about the platform or the infrastructure architecture and what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah. So we've been focused on AWS. If you've worked with AWS before, you might know that there are 31 million ways to deploy a container to AWS. But over time, we have gravitated towards Kubernetes for a number of reasons. One is we're big fans of open source, but another is we really like the way it structures the ability to make decisions about common infrastructure problems. And simultaneously, we like to offload as much of the heavy operations to a provider as possible, like Heroku or AWS. So on AWS, what we've done is built a suite of Terraform modules for building opinionated EKS clusters and deploying Rails-like applications to them. So that's what we'll be using today. And that platform, including making the EKS clusters and all the foundational resources, is already deployed for us. And so what I've been working on for Hub is creating the AWS resources we need to deploy that application into our sandbox environment, which is where we deploy staging applications.
Mm-hmm.
So I have built out a Terraform stack or root module for the staging instance of the application here. The Rails application is pretty big. It has a lot of different API integrations, but in terms of stateful dependencies, it's actually pretty limited. Like it uses Postgres, it uses Redis for Sidekick, and it has an S3 bucket, and that's about it. So most of what we'll be doing for everything else is just managing the secrets for the integrations.
When you say, so just to clarify, when you say stateful dependencies, you mean things like databases and sort of file storage and things like that?
Exactly. When we talk about application resources, we tend to split things into state versus compute. And so compute is all your containers using CPU, RAM, network running on some hardware somewhere. And state is where the persistent data lives for that application. There's also sort of a gray area of state, which is cloud resources that are not strictly speaking data. As an example, we create IAM roles, which define what an application is allowed to do. And we include that as part of the application state because it's long-lived. Like when we plan out our infrastructure builds, we think a lot in terms of dependencies and life cycles, and we try to build up the longer, more persistent resources first, so that when you swap out the compute layer, it's easier. And so in our state modules, we include everything from the databases and any other storage solutions we need to AWS configuration like secrets, roles, etc.
Okay, cool. If all this sounds interesting to you and you're looking to find more or learn more about this, we actually have a intro to site reliability engineering online workshop on February 29th. And so there's a link in the show description on YouTube, but you can also go to tbot.io/SRE workshop and join us there. It's not site reliability engineering is a part or is the focus of the workshop, which is much more than just deployment to infrastructure. So it should be a great time, and I hope you join us there.
Right. And when I mentioned that we built an opinionated suite of modules, one of the opinions in there is that if you're deploying at scale, you should be doing SRE. And not everybody follows that particular practice. And so not every EKS cluster is set up to provide the infrastructure you would want if you're doing SRE. And our platform based around Flight Deck and EKS specifically deploys components so that it's easy to get applications set up for site reliability engineering. So I think it's actually a nice tie-in to the workshop. Like part of why we build things the way we build them is so that we can then do the things we talk about in the workshop.
Yeah. So I know one of the first steps, which you're past now, was, on Heroku, or was to create a Docker file for the application.
Yep. And that's built and getting pushed now. So we have a separate module or stack for the CI and CD resources. So for each application, we make a container registry where you can push your container images. And then GitHub actually has this really cool integration with AWS based on OpenID Connect, which makes it possible. Like if you've used AWS before, you've probably run into AWS secret access key and access key ID. And copying and pasting those, I think, gives everybody the jitters. And what this OpenID Connect provider lets you do is establish a trust policy between certain IAM roles in your AWS account and GitHub Actions directly without ever actually persisting the credentials. And so it's all based on cryptographic trust and policies you define here, like saying which repositories are allowed to run actions. And you can even say which branches or things like pull requests. It's pretty cool. So we have all of that set up and working for building the container and pushing that. And the next thing to do there is to start building out the state module so that we could deploy the application. Because if we deployed it right now, it wouldn't have any databases to connect to, it would have no privileges and so on. And so that's what this module is for. I have already built out the Postgres database, the Redis instance. We have it configured to work with our Kubernetes cluster. We use special permission sets to decide who's allowed to do different things in the application. And this is a similar OIDC connection, but for deployment versus building container images. And then, like I said, a big part of what we have to manage for an application like this is the secrets for its many integrations. And so what I've done is created a JSON file, which I am trying to locate, that lists out the different environment variables we need populated with secrets, and it groups them by the service they work with. So these are the internal application secrets. And then for any service we use, there will be a separate secret manager or secret with the environment variables for that service. And so these are all applied. We have the secrets. We have like a JSON mapping for each one. What we do not have is the secret values populated in AWS, which might sound like a very boring problem, but for a like DevOps operations person, it's actually interesting. And so we have all of the values in Heroku, and I've kept all of the environment variables the same. One way to do this is to go to the command line and then one by one copy each secret from Heroku and then paste it into the appropriate place in AWS. But that is error prone and repetitive. And also you can't do that without seeing or having the secret in your clipboard at some point, which has problems, especially if like us, you're planning to do this on a live stream today. So what I thought
I started to get a flop sweat as you started to talk about what we were going to do.
Yeah, cut. What I thought we could do is write a script. Since we have all of the secrets and the environment variables in a machine readable format, and we can fetch them from Heroku through the API, I thought it might be fun to try introspecting on the mappings we have, and then one by one building up the secrets from Heroku and pushing them to AWS.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking we would do. So to make that feasible, Terraform modules have this thing called outputs, where you can include the result of something that you've created as an output of your module. And you can use that either between modules, or you can do it in the root of a module. When you apply, it will show you the outputs. And there are no actual secret values. No, really?
You lost your
I
S3
have
guy.
to. Yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
I'm not sure. I usually don't do this in the Visual Studio Code terminal. I wonder if that's part of why it's cranky with me. My computer realized I was streaming this to people, so like a child is going to embarrass me. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to run the secret AWS command to see if it knows who I am, and it does. And now I can try this again. So this will print out the names of the secrets it has created, and the environment variables it's expecting to find them. Doesn't have any of the secret values yet. So I, at this point, cannot accidentally disclose them to the internet.
I should point out, if we're monitoring the chat, so if you have any comments, questions, that kind of thing for us along the way, definitely drop them in there, and we'll see it and get back to you.
Yeah, there are certain points here where sometimes it takes a while to do something in the cloud, and that's where our double feature comes in. We can cut to Chad's screen where more exciting things will be happening. So this is what a Terraform output looks like. So I've set up this output that shows us what we're calling the developer managed secrets. As much as possible, we try to have the secrets managed by Terraform, either being randomly generated or connecting to the API, like we create and rotate the database secrets automatically. We have a good number of secrets we're going to be managing by hand, at least to start here. And so this is printing those. Now that we have them in the output, one of the things you can do with Terraform is output a specific, print a specific output as JSON. So I have this JSON thing, and this is what I'm planning to feed into the script we're going to write.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get scripted.
Seems like this is a good script to write in general, because we're doing more and more migrations from Heroku to AWS.
Yeah, there's this cycle we tend to go through where we do some things by hand, and then we write an automation and improve it over a few cycles, and then that ends up being an open source project.
So Clarissa, what we're doing is writing a script to take the keys from Heroku and set them as secrets in AWS without having to copy and paste them one by one.
So I think I'm going to use JQ.
Mm-hmm.
Not JK, but JQ. Let's see. So
you're gonna be able to do the lookup by.
I think I will. I've written probably an inappropriate amount of JQ. So each one has environment variables, but for this one, we just want the name. And actually, you can't. There's no for in bash.
What? There's no for in. Are you not using bash?
I am. Is there a for in bash?
I thought that there was, but I could be wrong.
Oh, there is. There's like for. Yeah. Okay. For. That's how it works. Let's see how we do it here. It's not auto-indenting, which...
Yeah, I don't know if that's a configuration thing or it means that we're typing nonsense.
It's like when you start to see the syntax colors get weird, it's like, oh. applications.
So the $cat, well, that did it. The $cat, what is that? That makes it so that the input, the piped input is coming into that variable?
Yeah, it's just reading standard input into a variable. If you are only going to use it once, you could just use standard input here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think what I'm going to do is first read through the secret names and then read through again.
Yep.
And once you read through a stream, it's done. So I'm sticking it in a variable. Hope it's not too big. What is this that I want? I don't want the braces. Yes. Okay, cool. All right, so now we have
I definitely
names
do not know that off the top of my head. So
so now we have a secret name. And take you. So now we need to. Said I'd be able to do it without looking it up, but I'm inevitably going to forget. Hit select. I think that's how that works. I call it feedback.
well, you type, I'm just gonna, I don't know what people watching are familiar with, but JQ is a JSON, a command line JSON parser. And so it allows you to parse and perform operations on JSON from the command line. So we're writing a shell script that is doing that.
This secret.
I like the Unix shell quoting issues.
Yeah, it's like, don't create a GitHub issue, please. It's you. So it's saying at line 1, which is the only line, unexpected field. I'm guessing it's complaining about this.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that? Cannot index array with string name. No.
There you
Look
go.
at that. All right, and then I need to do the same thing where I flatten the array so I get text that Batch can read. And that didn't work.
Does it need to be inside of the map?
it might need to be inside of the map. I'm wondering if I need to do it twice. First, let's just put it inside the map. Okay. All right, and so now we have is equals this. And then what we're going to want to do is build up JSON, I think, like key map values for the environment variables. So let's just check the manual before I write that code. Secret ID, secret string value. We recommend you create the secret string as JSON key value pairs. Sounds like I can do that.
So for those people just tuning in, what we're doing is we're writing a script to migrate from Heroku environment variables and insert them into AWS secrets. We have a Terraform output that's giving us the JSON of all of the environment variables on this Heroku app, and we're writing a bash script to loop through them and set them in AWS.
I'm going to make a fake secret value for now, so I can print it to my console while we're testing. Okay. So what I want to do is set name with this, which is pretty cool. Value. And a quote somewhere. I like this arg thing because then you don't have to do string interpolation. And I don't have to worry about this having a space in it like it does. So this will update the secret value repeatedly until we finally get final secret value, which should be not real right now. Cool. And so in here, we'll have to fetch that environment variable from the Heroku app. But once we have the value, what we can do is AWS manager, put secret value, secret ID, secret name, secret thing. What I'm going to do is let's echo this to see what that would look like.
Do you need quotes or? Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that looks weird, but the shell is going to escape that string. And I'm pretty sure AWS will be fine with having spaces in the value. We will find out.
And we want to So, and you were saying that's the recommendation to have a hash with the name and then the value.
Yeah, you can also just do a plain string, which can occasionally be nice for something like a certificate or a binary file.
Mm-hmm.
But overwhelmingly, we do string key value pairs and use them as environment variables. Okay, so now what I think I want to do is the Heroku app, and then the envar value will make that. So this will build up a JSON object with the actual secrets now to the app, and then update the thing in secrets manager. Take that out, but also just for safety, in case I made a mistake here at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yes.
And while this runs, we can watch Chad do some Rails refactoring.
Okay. Oh, I'll make the window a little bit smaller here. Okay. So people on the stream have seen us do development on the system we call Hub, which is a internal system at thoughtbot, manages our schedule, knows what everyone's working on, their skills, and it has a message board, and it connects to lots of different systems. It knows the internal GitHub repos that we have, and it has the ability to search them. And that searching has been a separate Rails application that uses Elasticsearch. Hub indexes a bunch of stuff into that Elasticsearch instance. And then we have this Rails app that is available internally only. And so we can search for things and you know, this is a bunch of fake data, but so you can see that it's that was the initial load, so it's pretty snappy. And then within Hub, we have this command palette, which I think I've actually shown on the stream before, which allows us to search search.thoughtbot.com as well. So search knows has the Elasticsearch instance, and Hub inputs the things that are in its domain model directly into that Elasticsearch instance. And but search knows and indexes the things that are not part of Hub, like the GitHub repositories, pulling down the markdown in them and making it available for indexing. And it also has something else we worked on the stream before was we do have an LLM hooked up to search, so you can ask it questions of the information that it has. It finds the most relevant the documents it thinks it's most relevant, and then it asks. Right now, it's ChatGPT. It gives it that context and asks your question. And so some of that functionality is all within the search app. So we are migrating Hub, which is what we're working on the flip side of the double feature, to the AWS infrastructure. And that caused us to look at whether it makes sense to keep search separate, because at this point, not many people use this web interface to Hub, to search, sorry. Most people use this command palette, and there are downsides to them being separate applications in terms of what we can do with search. There are pros, obviously, to them being separate services as well. Like to run the specs on the search app takes literally like 3 seconds to run all the specs, and Hub takes a lot longer. But from an infrastructure standpoint, and from a maintenance standpoint, and from the search application is actually doing standpoint, we've made the decision to merge the search app itself into Hub. And so the functionality for managing that, um, so like the functionality for managing that will all come over into Hub. So that's what we're going to do. Joe, was the script successful?
Not on the first try. I'm happy to go through that, the journey I took, if that would be interesting. So I'll try presenting again to show how that went, and then I think I would be interested to keep diving into the search merge, the smurge.
Okay.
Present.
It looks like your
you can see the output again, right? Did I get disconnected? Okay, well, I'm going to assume people can still hear me. So I ran the script with the not real values. It printed some things like what I expected. And so then I ran it with the real one, which is when I cut out just in case it was going to start printing things. And I got what you always get the first time you do something on AWS, which is get an access denied exception. And the reason is that we use these things called permission sets for accessing different things in AWS. And to make sure that people don't accidentally view or change secrets, we use a separate permission set to update and view secret values. And it's the only one that can view those. Even the infrastructure admin role that's allowed to create and delete the secrets is not allowed to look at the value. And so what I had to do was sign in using that permission set, which you can see here. I had not ever done that before, so I had to configure it and sign in. Then I reran the script with that sandbox secrets profile, and it imported all the secrets. And these things you see here are just identifiers and not actually secret values. So it put all the secrets on the servers.
Cool.
It worked. Cool. So do we want to switch back to the search merge for a minute, or do we want to change tracks and work on trying to deploy Hub some more?
We can make a little progress on the search merge. I think that's fine.
Yeah, people want to see some Ruby, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this is my computer now, and we've got the Hub app running locally, and what I've done is I've opened Visual Studio Code and moved the Hub directory and the search directory into a place where I can get at them both. So we're actually by way of comment, we're literally just
Looks like you muted yourself.
okay. having technical difficulties. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. You can hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, that's weird. Hold on.
Can you hear yourself?
Can you try saying something again?
Hello?
No. Okay. So I'll just keep on talking. The hub and the search are in this top level directory. So we have a decision making point to make, which is if we merge search into hub, how important is it to keep the Git history when we do that merge of all that code? We're actually doing a merge on another application right now, and for that application, we decided it's a much larger application that's being merged into about an application of about the same size, and we made a decision to keep that source code, uh, the Git history. I mean, of that application. So what we actually did was we merged the two Git repositories together, and that's possible to do, preserving both of the histories. And we merged the application into a subdirectory in the repo that was becoming the monolith, um, and then that with preserving the history, so it's all under a path. And then we're able to move the files into place inside of the Rails app. And so if you look at the history for that file, it not only shows the move, but it more importantly shows the entire Git history of that file. So for the search merge, I personally don't think that that's as important to preserve that Git history. The search app is a small app. We have, when it comes to the app, there is five app specific models. They're relatively straightforward and small, and there's not a lot more to it than the models and some rake tasks and some fairly straightforward UI. So that's my plan, is to literally just go through the search app, uh, pulling the application specific stuff into hub, copying the files over. um, Joe, we haven't talked about this. Do you agree or disagree with the approach of losing the Git history when we do this? Of course, I can't hear you, so it doesn't matter what your opinion is. I'm going to proceed with mine anyway.
No, Chad, stop. No, I agree with you.
Okay. This is eventually going to be an issue that I can't hear you anymore. The issue is definitely on my side, by the way. It's not you. It's me. Okay, so I think maybe I think we need to fix the issue that I can't hear you. So I'm going to drop for just a sec. It's going to be just you, Joe, and I'll be back. Okay.
While we're waiting, let me get my Visual Studio Code up again so you have something to look at.
I'm back
Oh, hello.
again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, I just put my screen up. Do you want to switch back to search?
Yes.
Let me stop sharing.
Okay. Okay.
It's like watching two movies at once.
Yeah. Okay, so we have so I know what a primary, I think the primary things we need to look at, and this is actually good. Like, what do I do when I look at a Rails app for the first time to get a sense of what's there, right? And uh, can you guess what I usually what is the first thing that I look at, Joe? Do you think?
Models?
Oh, yeah, I did look at the models first, but a lot of times it's the routes file. Um, oh, and that's the hub one. Um, because that's like, the top level thing. It's application specific, starts to give me a sense of what is possible with the application. So we have the routes, we have the models, and then controllers.
The schema is also interesting sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, so let's look at the schema. Um, it's going to keep on loading hub files. So it looks like we're using delayed job on search, whereas I know on hub we're using Sidekick. So we'll lose that along the way. Then we just have a repositories model. The other things in models are plain old Ruby objects. They're not active record models.
And do we actually have any background jobs in search?
Good question.
That looks like it's showing hub again.
So we have what I'm doing is I'm searching for the word perform because that would be like a perform now or perform later. And the only thing I'm seeing is other models that also have a method, a perform method, but they're not jobs. So good point. It looks like we do not actually have any jobs um, in search. Yeah, and that's just the log. Cool. So that'll make that straightforward. We won't even need to worry about that. Okay, we have our models. Oh, I guess I could have just looked in the jobs directory.
You don't want to spoil the ending.
I know. There's no Java application specific JavaScript in this app. It's a relatively small service. We got some helpers. So at this point, I feel like I have. Do you have any other questions? Anything that you want to look at, or shall we start moving stuff?
I think we can start moving stuff.
Okay,
Do you start with the feature specs?
that's what. Yeah, that's what I was thinking we would do. Is start with the feature specs, and so I'm going to. So one of the things that I'm going to be careful of as we go is search is integrated into hub. So there are things called search. There's probably a feature spec in hub called search. So we need to be careful about any name conflicts. Um, so there's a feature spec in search, and there is a identically named file in Hub as well. So let's actually open that file and look at it. This is for the JavaScript spec for removing all search items from the command palette and seeing that the placeholder changes when that happens. So in the case of these two specs, and we can just leave that there and bring this over. So in this merge, we are going to lose the exact way that authentication happens in the search app. It's doing authentication against Google, and so is Hub, but it's not. The way that we write the specs to do that are going to be a little bit different. You can see in search we mock the Google sign-in, and that's happening at a different level in Hub. So what you can say is you visit the root path as a person, and it will log in as that person. So I think we can just move these scenarios into the Hub app and then change them. I think in the case of this, since it's one file into another, I'll copy and paste it actually. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need a person. And then so we visit the search path as that person, we fill in the search field, and we submit it. And we see that we get the result that we're expecting. Might as well. And this is a spec for filtering the results down to a specific kind of thing. So we see that we have both of the results that we're expecting, and then we click to filter down to just messages, and then we only have the one result that is the message. So those are the two specs, and they are the sort of happy path specs for the main search interface. So there's no way this is going to work. But let's run it and see the, it's, the path is wrong. Okay, factory not registered result. So our search spec factories has the result factory. In Hub, we are primarily using factories directory with individual factories. We recently made that change. So
Was it previously all one file?
it was previously all one file. What's your preference, Joe?
In an application this size, definitely to have a directory.
Oh, I was right the first time. Spec factories result.rb. Actually, I'll just. So I don't know. I have to be honest. I'm not sure that I would go quite as step by step as I've started to do now. It's comfortable to go step by step, but I was feeling like the next failure was going to be obvious, which was the model wasn't going to be there, and so I don't know. But what's your guidance, Joe? Should I move faster or just keep on doing what I'm doing?
I think I would probably do something similar to what you're doing and then accelerate. Like start gently, and then once it's like, yep, this is going how I expected, make a git commit, and then just copy in a bunch of files.
Yeah. Okay, so let's app models make sure there's not a result model. There's not, so copy in. Actually, I should copy in the. Do you think I should copy the spec in?
You probably want the spec, right?
Yeah. Well, I want the spec. I was just thinking about the order of operations, but
You have an app there.
thank you. Okay. Okay. Then we'll copy in the actual model. And let's run that spec again just to. Okay, so where it's failing is getting the Elasticsearch configuration. That's because we don't have the configuration yet. Let's run the, I think the result spec is going to fail the same way, spec models. Yeah, so it fails the same way. So, let's look at that. So the search app uses Elasticsearch client, and it does a config an initializer like this, and puts the client in a constant and gets its config from a YAML file. Now let's go over to Hub. No, that is Hub. This is also Hub. Search. Elasticsearch. This is the config. Search uses Rails configuration, and does dependency injection into the search and the result class with the Elasticsearch. So now I think when you're doing a app merge, you have to, you know, there's this overlap here, and we need to. It's sort of like two decisions rolled up into one. It's how much you change while you're doing the merge, and how much you keep the same, just so that you don't unintentionally break something. And if you do decide to change something, um, which one do you choose? I guess is the flip side of that question. There's another approach too, which is to do the merge, keeping things the same in both places, and then making a to-do list of things we want to change later.
I think in this case, since there are so few pieces to change coming from search, it makes more sense to change them as you do it to the hub approach.
Mm-hmm.
That's my instinct. I don't think either approach is clearly superior. Like I like dependency injection, but also referencing models during initializers can be problematic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we go over to the result model, that is now in Hub. This is the Hub version of it. In Hub, this is going to be just available as a constant. So I think all that's what we would need to change. But there is this.
Where did that come from? Oh, it's the same. They're like siblings in the.
Yeah. It's this. And for tests, it's a separate index. And let's just take another look. So it's actually called index name, but it is available. I'm curious whether it's used at all. So yeah, in Hub, it's not made available because it's not used at all. It's just the client is initialized with it. But in search, it needs the ability to delete and rebuild the index, and that's why it needs to know the name. I think that's the reason why.
The index name isn't specified when you make the client, though, is it?
No, you're right. It's not. I'm going. I went over there now to look at it.
Do search makes me think of New Coke.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's a separate in Hub. This is in Hub. It's a separate constant index name. Where's that defined? Oh, it actually is being pulled from the configuration, but it's happening in the new search class. There's really no issue then doing. I'm just copying and pasting, so I have it. There's really no issue doing these variables are the same value, but in both hub and
But index name is scoped, right?
yeah. So I was thinking I would move that. It's not a very well named thing to be top level. How do you feel about that for now?
I feel fine about it for now.
Okay, I think we have changed what we need to change in order to do that. Get that.
We should at least get a new error.
Oh, cool. So Hub has a fake Elasticsearch client. I forgot about that. And the specs don't run against a real Elasticsearch index. Apparently. That was an unforeseen complication. Yeah, so here's where it's, I did a search for it, and here's where it's being configured when the specs run to use fake Elasticsearch client instead of.
Nobody expects the remove const.
This is going to be a little bit of an issue because we need, I think we want the specs to actually hit Elasticsearch once it comes to the actual searching functionality.
What does that actually look like in the spec?
So in the case of a result,
It's stubbed out.
yeah, in this particular thing, it's stubbed out. If we do the search spec, that's using the result factory, and that is a Ruby object, and it's an after create is refreshing the actual index in Elasticsearch. So the result model is calling save to put it in the index.
So the result spec stubs out the client. Does the search spec use real Elasticsearch?
Yeah. So the search spec, feature spec, you mean?
Oh, I meant the model spec, but I guess the feature spec is important too.
Oh, I see what you're saying. This is the search model spec, and it is, yes, it is actually doing Elasticsearch operations, and you can tell because it has Elasticsearch true. So that's what we could do. We could make it so that when you set Elasticsearch true on a spec, it's real Elasticsearch. Otherwise, it's the fake Elasticsearch.
I think that makes sense. Is there nothing in Hub right now that uses in the hub tests that use Elasticsearch? Because there's real search functionality in it, right?
There is. So this is a. Yeah, so this is hitting the fake. Or actually, in this case, it's doing it's stubbing it out.
And are there, I guess we saw one feature spec that was like, what happens when you clear the prompt?
Yeah,
But I'm
that was
guessing
the
no.
existing. That's for the command palette, so it's not doing an actual search there.
So we'd be adding as Elasticsearch as a dependency to the hub specs.
Yeah, it looks like it looks to me like it's not currently a dependency to the hub specs. Which is, I mean, if you didn't, that can't be, it's doing a remove constant, but it would have needed to make that constant in the first place.
Yeah, maybe the client initializes lazily, so
Yeah, that's probably it.
I think it's probably okay to have it as a dependency. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
working on hub, you probably need it for development anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just in CI, it's going to be annoying.
Yeah, I will say, because so running the test, all of the indexing of things happens in background jobs, and when you run the specs, or sorry, and when you're running in development mode, background jobs on Hub don't get executed by default. You need to enable it to be executed. So it is possible to be doing development on Hub and not. I don't know whether the application will boot if you don't have Elasticsearch, but it's not actively hitting the Elasticsearch instance on a regular basis. So it's with this weird gray area now, but I think it is fine to introduce it as a dependency. It's sort of the point of what we're doing. So the way that this happens is if um, is you can specify an around block, um, and what that does is it currently this is in search. It creates the index at the beginning of each of these specs, so it's fresh, and it runs the example. And um, if you call create index multiple times, when it's already been what if you call apparently there's a bug or something that being called multiple times or something calls the index not to exist. So it's catching it. So I think what we want to do in Hub is uh, take this and so now Do you know, Joe, whether you can say Elasticsearch is false?
Well, that one is a
and it'll-
before suite hook.
Right. What I was thinking I would change it to is before each.
I think you can do that. You could also swap out the constant and the around block. I don't know which is going to be. It's probably not going to be meaningfully faster either way.
Okay. So that means that the result spec in Hub, the Hub version of it. So for the result spec, they basically all need Elasticsearch. So let's run the spec, see what happens. Uninitialize constant search. And that's because this now uses this to create the index. I thought I saw something about creating an index in new search. Yeah. We have more duplication than I realized between these two applications, which I guess strengthens the argument for merging them together. So I feel like we should change this to use the Hub version of it,
Which is new search.
which is new search. What was it? New search, create index, bang.
Might be a good refactoring task later to merge the new search and search. Are they modules? One is a class and one is a module.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't see a benefit to not just calling the index directly. Do you?
Not unless we're trying to keep the details encapsulated within the new search namespace.
So this has the option to force, but we need to actually, I think we want to do that. And that's why then we need to catch the not found, because if it tries to delete before and it's not there, that's when that it throws that error. I'm remembering now. Okay, let's run the spec again. It might work. Might not. Oh, okay. We got green, some green. Okay, so this looks like there is some stubbing being done right here on this spec. It expected to be called, and it was never called.
Because now it gets it directly from Elasticsearch client.
Exactly. Yep. And we lost the ability to do dependency injection, which is what the spec is doing with the client. So we have fake Elasticsearch client now.
And you could stub right on the constant, right? Like allow Elasticsearch client to receive whatever it's doing.
But is that going to get removed at the end of the spec? I've run into that problem in the past.
It should get removed after each spec.
This spec is also so I'm pausing because I'm realizing we added Elasticsearch true to the whole thing, but we could only put it on the ones that do hit, and those one that completely stubs the Elasticsearch client, then we could do fake Elasticsearch receives those things.
It's true.
Also, this spec does not actually. Oh,
Yeah, it looks like there's only one that actually hits Elasticsearch.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that one, this one stubs it. Wait, which one actually hit?
Maybe they all stub
Yeah,
it.
these ones. Yeah, these ones do. So
It might just be the feature specs and
yeah.
if there's a search spec.
So this is allow fake search client. Oh, I like how it was needing to put back the previous client before. I'm gonna keep on doing that. The I'm wondering whether this is actually gonna work but I think it will. I was gonna say because it's already put in a constant that's being used, but it's mostly just thinking out loud. So I had the syntax of that wrong.
You can remove the previous client, right?
Yeah. So the error is undefined method toSim for an instance of hash on line 30. Oh, allow to receive.
You want with, right?
Yes.
To
No.
receive delete by query with true.
Yes.
I think that syntax is for building a double. Like if you do something equals double, you can give it the hash.
Okay. No.
That looks right to
No,
me.
this isn't the with. It is what it returns
Oh, so to be to receive
and
delete by
return.
query and return true.
Yeah. Fake Elasticsearch client does not implement delete by query. So we have hub configured. We have our spec in hub configured to I don't actually know.
The other one just did star arguments, which seemed to work.
Yeah. And then here we can actually just, okay. Undefined local variable for client. Now we're going to find out if, yeah. So maybe I was wrong about being able to do it on this, and it needs to be. Okay, cool. So now we'll do the same thing. It's interesting because the thought I have as I do this is I'm not sure that these specs should be stubbing out the Elasticsearch. They are the result specs, and they're the only two that actually test that the result indexes itself. You can stub it out, but and for what it's
Yeah.
worth, like I wrote this, so
Yeah, I could see the merit in actually hitting Elasticsearch and seeing that you can read it back out in the unit spec. Because otherwise, the only place you do that is in the feature specs, and you don't really test the attributes thoroughly, right?
right.
But that could also be a future refactoring.
Yeah. I think these are going to pass. Yes. Okay. So we actually ended up completely removing Elasticsearch true on this. We added it, and then we didn't need it at all once we actually looked into it. So let's go back to the search feature spec, our spec. Line 24. That's a good line. Okay, so we're getting undefined method URL for nil. Okay. So this, we copied over how the factory was defined, and now this is different.
That's just Elasticsearch client, right?
Yeah. But like, why is it creating a new, why is it doing new there? I don't think we need to do that. I think we can just do.
The nice thing about globals is that they're global.
Right.
The bad thing about globals is that they're global.
See, cool. Undefined method, new search path. So that does not exist in the app yet.
Is it going to be new search path?
No, the actual search is the reason why Hub has a new search thing is because it used to have a search model. In fact, it probably still does. Hub. Okay. Yeah, thankfully it doesn't. But at one point it did. And so a class got created called new search, but then search was deleted, it looks like. And that class was never renamed.
I like it. It has a certain charm to it.
Right. We'll call our classes in this, we'll call it new search final.
V2.
V2. Okay, awesome. So that is working this factory is working successfully now with the client. And so go to routes for search. And we're missing the searches controller. Go to routes for hub. There's some things, this routes file is so big, there are some things that are in alphabetical order and some things that aren't. It's really, it's in roughly alphabetical order.
This file is like a history of thoughtbot.
Yeah. So now I'm expecting it to say there's no controller. Yep, perfect. So interestingly enough, Hub does have a API searches controller, which does not talk to. Oh, there's no way that this code is used or tested. There's no search class anymore. That's awesome.
So it used to like delegate it to
to
old search.
Yep.
Which was originally written in Scala.
Yep. There's only a couple of controllers in this app. Okay, so we no longer need this require Google authentication. And let me just check something. Yeah. Okay. What I was checking was whether just reminding myself of the kinds of things we often put on controllers in this app. And we don't need any of these additional security things. It's all wrapped by default to require a login, but we don't need, everyone should be able to search who has access to the app. Okay, now this is going to run and it's going to say that there's no search model. We already confirmed that there was no search model already. Search spec models search. It's sort of convenient now that the new search model is called new search.
Even though it's older.
Right. Why isn't it finding it? Oh, I just moved, I moved the spec into the models directory. That was a mistake. Models, search spec to spec models. Okay, so this already has the Elasticsearch true on it. So let's, oh, but I see it's doing stubbing there. So let's run this spec. And I think some of it's going to pass and some of it's going to fail. So this is the same error we were getting before on the result class, and that is because the search class is using the search way of, it's using the dependency injection. So this is code that can eventually be cleaned up, I think, but I think
Is that the same index as the one that gets created by a hub?
yes. Yeah.
Just thinking about how that works.
You're thinking long and hard about how that works. Yeah. And I'm realizing as I write this that I don't think we want to do this. I think we want to say, I mean, we could just leave it. What do you think?
I'm not sure which version, like the delete, I'm less worried about, but the create, I'm not sure which version was actually used to create the production index.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming that's the one we want to keep.
Mm-hmm. Well, we saw the create index on Hub, right? And it didn't have any of this stuff. And I know for a fact search has this stuff. So it must be this one.
So probably the Hub one was just for convenience for development, and this one is for real.
Yeah.
We could also just move the definition into the Hub one. Like I agree with the general principle of like merge first, clean up second.
We didn't look at this closely before, but
oh boy,
it is there.
Are they the same?
Let's see. I immediately spotted one difference. Let me. Number of shards is not here. Standard lowercase ASCII folding and mapping strict description text analyzer folding. Description text analyzer folding. So dynamic strict isn't set. I don't know off the top of my head what that does. There are things on the image that aren't over here.
For the sake of getting the test to pass, we probably don't have to figure out.
Yeah.
But in the process of going through this, we've identified something that needs to be clarified, I think.
Yeah. So we can keep this like this instead of calling out to index. Oops, I accidentally just changed the search one. So we can keep this like this, and we can keep this like this instead of calling out to the index. That's probably going to get us to passing fastest. And then we can just remove this to make sure it's not being called anywhere. I should have just, no, I can't really do find and replace easily on this. Okay. Let's run those specs again. They may pass. Nope. Oh, did I miss? Yeah. Okay, so now we're back to these. So we can change this.
I think we had to use the Elasticsearch constant.
You're right. Thank you. The specs are using that index. Let's see if this passes. Cool. So we can do the same here. Thanks everybody for watching, spending your Friday with us. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. And what we're doing is we're merging a smaller search application into a larger Rails application. Okay, let's run the whole file. So we didn't end up adding Elasticsearch true anywhere on this file. Oh no, it already had it.
You shall not pass.
Uninitialized constant search Elasticsearch. I think those might be separate gems. Oh. So lowercase s on the client. Yeah, that's Elasticsearch Query Builder, which is different than the client, which is provided by the Elasticsearch gem.
And one of them is lowercase and the other is uppercase. Yep. This is fine. Oh, we have a question in the chat.
How much, Joe, do you want to bet that was done intentionally to avoid overwriting or creating any conflicts in the namespace?
You're probably right. I don't know why you wouldn't just do it all as like one constant, like Elasticsearch Query Builder, if you're going to do that.
So Pablo asked, when are you going to get to the AWS migration? We actually started with the AWS migration and then we took a break to move over to this, but we've been doing this for a little while. So let's bundle here and let's get this. If you're good, we can, Joe, is there something else to do for the AWS migration that we could jump into?
There's a lot else we could do.
Yeah.
I don't know about fireworks.
So let's get this spec passing and then we'll jump back over to the AWS migration. We don't want to disappoint Pablo. Area of effect. Okay, this spec's passing. Oh, let's just run this feature spec while you connect your screen share, Joe. Oh wait, I needed to run a specific line. Cool. So it browsed to the search and there's no view. We didn't move in the views yet. So I realized I never created a branch. We just jumped right in. Okay.
Here we go. Oh no, don't present slides. My screen.
I don't see your screen. Oh, there we go. Awesome. So now we've switched over to Joe's computer.
So what we have here is our Terraform module that defines the stateful resources, that is the databases, buckets, AWS configuration for the application, and also the manually managed secrets we need to connect to various outside providers. So this module has been applied. We have a Postgres instance, a Redis instance. The secrets were created, and I used this incredible bash script to import them, and that appears to have worked. So the next thing we want to do is set up the deploy configuration for this instance of the app in our Kubernetes cluster. So this creates what we call the stateful resources. What we need now is the configuration for the compute resources, which will tell it that it is allowed to run containers and it's allowed to access these secrets. And from there, we'll switch over to GitHub Actions. So what we typically do here is when we upgrade clusters, rather than upgrading components in place, we do a blue-green approach. And so we have like a one-to-many mapping of application tenant to cluster install, because when we upgrade the cluster, we'll do sandbox v2 and then deploy that one. So if we jump over to another example, you can see we have a state module similar to the one we made for Hub. And then we have this module, which actually installs it. And I think actually this is all going to be exactly the same, because it's basically just copying outputs from one module as inputs to the next.
Now you lost the staging suffix that you had on that. Do you think it's important?
I did, yeah. It generally doesn't matter. So we distinguish sandbox from staging as our typical deployment is to have a sandbox account and cluster, which are all non-production things. And so if we had one pattern when you see this, we might have a demo and a dev and so on and different things. And so then we might have sandbox, dev v1, demo v1, and so on. But I don't think any of the thoughtbot internal apps have more than 2 instances. So the distinction will probably not matter, but this is the more explicit way to do it. And then let's just see what happens if I... If you've never seen Terraform before, it is a declarative infrastructure as code tool. So you define resources that you would like to exist and what you want them to look like. And then Terraform compares what you've defined with what it believes already exists and comes up with a plan to make your infrastructure look like what you said it should look like. And so rather than writing an imperative strategy like create this, create that, connect these, you can just say, I would like to have an EC2 instance.
And what is the TF files, the Terraform files? What is the actual language it's written in?
It's called HCL, HashiCorp configuration language. I would guess almost every HCL file in existence is Terraform, but there are a couple other HashiCorp products like Packer that use a similar syntax. And there are some projects in the ecosystem built on Terraform that also use that. It's technically HCL2.
Okay.
There's some stuff here I don't expect. It's updating our Lambda function. I don't know why.
So Pablo actually asks a question, Joe, is just because there's a few, especially since there's a few different tools we're actually using. So to automate the actual migration, does Terraform help with that when it comes to it?
I think the short answer is yes. So what Terraform does is it makes it really easy to spin up new infrastructure and throw away infrastructure. And what we typically like to do during a migration is get the new infrastructure up and running alongside the old infrastructure. See the compute layer running with different data before we do the actual cutover. We don't use Terraform directly during migration. Like, it's not a data migration tool, it's an infrastructure provisioning tool. But the ability to make those quick changes and make, for example, throwaway environments does make migrating easier. And one thing that I really like about it is you can create these abstractions between like staging and production. And once you've gotten it to work for staging, you can be reasonably confident it will work for production because you just reapply the same module to make the infrastructure, and then we write scripts for doing the migration. So you just change the names and it should work.
Yeah. And typically when we're writing scripts, we're typically writing shell scripts at that level because you're using the command line tools from AWS and Heroku and that kind of thing to do it.
That's right. Yeah. We have a couple things that we, actually, this is still a shell script, but we have some things that run as
Rust.
We do have, yep, we have that too. We have a Rust client flight control, but we've written a few Helm charts we use, which is it's like gem files for Kubernetes kind of. And what it'll do is run a job in the cluster that does the database snapshot and restore rather than running it on your local machine. And that way, we don't ever have to download production data locally, but also it's much faster to do the copy between Heroku and EC2 than with your local machine. I think what we're seeing here is a tricky problem that can happen in Terraform called a perpetual diff. So there can be something that confuses Terraform, which makes it think something is changing when it's not, which means that you can keep running the same configuration without changing it, and it will keep trying to delete and recreate certain resources. The ones that it is replacing are kind of harmless, like it's going to detach this IAM policy and reattach it. It's going to rewrite the IAM policy again. So I'm not really worried about those. What I want to see is that it's actually creating the things that I'm hoping for it to create. But I ran out of backlog.
So Pablo asked another question while this runs around whether it is useful for reverse migrations. I don't know that we've ever, at least not recently, done a migration from AWS to Heroku.
I have done that a couple times. If you provision your infrastructure with Terraform, it's also very easy to deprovision it with Terraform. And so, like, maybe a more concrete example that we have run into recently is we've started migrating some things from Heroku and realized that while the service was fun to write, there wasn't enough justification to migrate it and keep it running. And so, like, we built out some of the infrastructure in Terraform, started the migration, and went like, actually, let's just shut this down. And then at the end of that, you just clear out these files and it deletes everything you did. You don't have to go through the AWS console or Heroku or whatever and manually deprovision things. And so, like, in the case you started to migrate to AWS and you decided you're not going to, which I have seen, then you can just change your mind and delete everything without having to do it manually. This is done, and I just have to scroll through it now. This is what I'm looking for. Oh, it's just weird. It's like I'm going up and down and getting different results. Okay. So it's going to rewrite all my IAM policies. I want to see that it is correctly mapping the secrets I created into the cluster, which is going to be above all of these things that it's doing for no reason. Here it is. So you can see it's going to find all these secrets from Secrets Manager and then map different parts of them as environment variables. The names look good to me. Yeah, so this will inject the secret. It'll create the namespace in the Kubernetes cluster, which is like a folder for Kubernetes resources. And it'll do some of the parts that would be annoying to wire up by hand, like the IAM role. It'll have it set up so there's already an IAM role available for the application, for GitHub, and for developers. And then once we apply this, if it works cleanly, then we can go into Hub and write the configuration that tells it to deploy and use those roles. We might run out of time before we get to that point, though.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try to wrap up at actually at 4:45 Eastern, if that's okay with you, Joe.
That works for me. While we're watching this, what we've typically used to actually deploy the apps to the clusters is GitHub Actions, and we wrote a Helm chart we call Helm Rails that contains Kubernetes configuration for the components we typically use. Like the same way in Rails, you have to choose like, what am I going to use for background jobs? What am I going to use for database? If you're in Kubernetes, you have to make similar decisions about like how you're going to route traffic into the cluster, how you'll manage secrets. We have opinions on all those things, and between this module and the Helm chart, everything just clicks together if you're using the choices we made.
Cool. I'll take the opportunity to remind people we have online workshops specifically about site reliability engineering on February 29th. And you can register if that's a topic that you'd like to get started with and learn more about. You can register. There's a link if you're watching on YouTube. There's a link in the description. Also, you can go to tbot.io/SRE-workshop.
So we previously used the outputs to get that JSON map of developer managed secrets. I'm going to add some outputs now. Sandbox, staging V1.
How were these already there?
I copied them from another file.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll just show us the names of the things we used so we can plug them into the Helm chart values.
Yeah, it is a little confusing if you don't know if you're not super comfortable with the setup, like the fact that you changed all the some of them to sandbox staging is V1 and the others stayed as staging is a little confusing if you don't know what it is, which one it is.
Yeah, we could call this staging state to maybe make it clear. So that's what we're going to get. Okay, I don't know that I'll actually be able to get started on the Helm configuration in 4 minutes. Are there any like concluding? Is there any concluding discussion we want to have?
So just in terms of the next steps of the migration, just in general, what would they be?
So we will add deploy configuration to the hub application itself. That we have a GitHub workflow that's reusable that will deploy one of our apps to our cluster. So we'll use that action and plug in the roles we just created and got in the outputs, and then run that workflow to see it deploy. And then we need to get some data to test with.
Yeah.
My guess is the staging one will go pretty smooth. Because Hub integrates with so many APIs, we'll have to be careful when we do the production build out to not accidentally start like double running things or whatever. So we need to be a little mindful there, but there aren't any really unusual dependencies so far. So smooth sailing.
And then for things like doing the database migration, I've been part of various ones of those. You know, it all depends on whether the strategy for it depends on whether downtime is acceptable or not.
Right. If you want a zero downtime deploy between Heroku and AWS, you do need collaboration from Heroku support to get access to the I forget what it's called, something about the write ahead log, because it doesn't natively support replication to outside providers. And then you can use the service called DMS, which it takes a lot of fiddling with to get it to work, but that'll give you a faithful replication between two environments. If you're okay with a small amount of downtime, you can do a quick snap restore cutover, which is what we'll do with Hub. I was actually surprised at how small the Hub data set was. It's like 8 gigs or something. And so that only takes a couple of minutes, actually.
You know, I think the largest table is the versions table because we have a bunch of models that use Papertrail just for, to save previous data. I think that's the largest.
Yeah, that's the case in a lot of apps, and it's funny when it's running the Postgres restore. We're usually watching it run and trying to figure out how close we are based on where we are in the alphabet. And so we'll get like very close and be like, oh yeah, it's doing users, it's almost ready, and then you just see the dreaded versions at the end. It's like, oh.
Cool. Well, awesome. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. And as always, you can always get in touch with Thoughtbot to make a new Rails app, maintain, improve, or scale an existing app. Do migration if you're currently on Heroku and you need more capabilities, better security. We do these migrations quite often as well. So all this is available at thoughtbot.com. If you want to get in touch with us, thoughtbot.com/hire us. And as always, it's been a blast. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody. And I hope you all have a great weekend.